Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. Chances are you're probably one of the millions who are locked down. It's a strange new world. And in response to the strange new world we find ourselves in, we're doing some new different things. What we're going to be focusing on is how to keep your clients and the end users networks running smoothly with small or smaller networking teams. We're going to teach how companies can improve their operational efficiencies using our managed products. And I guess the question is, why are we doing this? Well, we are in a new world, but when we were doing some research as to how to respond to this COVID-19 world, we came across some interesting research that showed that the companies that survived economic downturns, the Great Depression, the economic implosion of 2008, they survived by focusing on those two things: doing more with less, doing more with smaller teams, and increasing operational efficiency. So today's webinar is one of several we have created to do this, to help you do this, to help you not only survive, but thrive during these very unique and challenging times. So again, thank you for joining us. I'll turn it over now to Zach Sherman.
Thanks, Derek. I appreciate it. As he mentioned, my name is Zach Sherman. I know I can't hear any of you. You're all muted. There will be a question and answer time at the end of the presentation. By all means, write them into the chat view. I'm going to try and focus on the overall presentation and get to them at the end. I believe Carly, our administrator, will be writing them down. If I don't get to anybody, please feel free to email me individually. My email is Zach, that's Z-A-C-H, .Sherman, S-H-E-R-M-A-N, as in the bottom, at EtherWAN.com. Today's brief presentation, and I say brief because we didn't know what we were going to be getting, as this is the first one in terms of audience and attention span, is about PoE. It's something that's come up a lot for both of our main vertical interests, that being security installations and for intelligent traffic systems, or ITS. Mainly because of the video that's required for both of them. So without further ado, I'm just going to jump right in. This slide specifically depicts who we are. I know some of you who are partners of the other EtherWAN people that are on this call have already seen this 1,000 times, but it bears a good resemblance of us, especially given the current situation. First, EtherWAN was started by NASA engineers. The Jet Propulsion Lab out of Southern California needed switches for all the different environments, and basically a couple of engineers broke off and started designing hardened switches. So that's where our bread and butter is. That's what we do best. We have been in business for over 20 years. We are a wholly owned subsidiary of a company called Phoenix Contact that focuses on industrial automation products, power supplies and such, PLCs, things like that. They are a monster company. They have no debt. So when we talk about companies that come out of this thriving, we are not going to disappear. We're going to be here when we come back out, and we are going to be stronger for it. We offer a lifetime warranty on every one of our hardened products. What does that mean? That means if you get one that breaks somehow, you get a new one. Now that there are some limitations to that. Basically, it says, you know, if you've got a product that we end of life, well, you still get a warranty on it, but it's reduced. But anyway, we have a free US-based technical support team. Myself, a gentleman named Shub, a gentleman named Greg, and then a gentleman named David Quo are our primary technical support groups. We offer free training. That's either as you're sitting in it right now or through our EtherWAN Academy site. My colleague, Greg Eckert, has done a ton of work on that. It's fantastic. Some of the courses, which you may see in some of these particular weekly slides or presentations online, are BICSI certified even. So if you happen to be an RCDD, which is for those of you who don't know that acronym soup, those are the cable pullers. Those are the guys who put in and design your copper infrastructure and your fiber infrastructure. These they account for continuing education credits. What does that really mean? That means that they're not EtherWAN commercials. They are actual industry information, best practices, and have been approved by a, let's call it an advisory board. We do our own manufacturing. We have been asked several times recently, what is happening to your supply chain? Are you going to be able to get things from China, from wherever you build them, India, anywhere that they are typically built? The truth is, we own our own production team. Now, we don't make capacitors and resistors and the things that go on the boards, but we do our own board assembly. So we have a lot of control over it, and we have a lot of components in place. We're not anticipating any slowdown in our delivery. We're not anticipating anything like that. Of course, things change every day, but that's where we stand right now. We are fully TAA compliant, and we're very plain about it. You won't have to find that information from us. We will send it right to you. If you're dealing with anybody in the government or anybody who seems to be prejudiced in any particular way to where the product comes from. We do have proprietary patented technology to show that we actually do some stuff other than just buy a Broadcom chipset and insert it into our particular switches. That's POL, that's power over link, which is an extended distance copper solution for hard to reach places. And then we do an easy link PoE, or excuse me, easy link wireless access bridge. Sorry, brain fart in the middle of that one. This slide kind of tells you a little bit about EtherWAN Academy. It's my bad, I didn't put up the actual address. It's academy.etherwan.com. This is free network training that I already mentioned a little bit of. It's ITS and security focused, and ITS being intelligent traffic systems. There are over 19 courses. Some of them are BICSI eligible. Some of them have not been submitted for BICSI eligible yet, but that is a matter of time, not a matter of content. They are available on your desktop and your mobile, and we strongly recommend that you check them out. They're really quite informational. For example, this presentation is going to be very brief about PoE. There's a PoE one on there that is extremely intense. I recommend it to anybody who says, "Oh, I didn't know what that was about." This will answer that. All right. So, one of the why EtherWAN things. What can EtherWAN do for you? We're very transparent. Being run by engineers rather than our marketing department or sales, particularly, although sales will tell you that they drive all business, and they do. We are very transparent about what we publish. So full PoE capabilities. What does that mean? That means that each port can actually deliver the budget, right? It means that we typically see in the marketplace, especially when I'm doing crossing or when I'm doing, meet comp type stuff. Somebody throws a switch at me, a D-Link, a whatever switch, and then they ask why ours is more expensive. Or they throw a high-end one, like a Brocade or a Cisco or something like that, and they say, why is Cisco's more expensive than yours? The primary reason is the ability of that switch to give power. That means that internally, our switch, there you see on the screen, the 24 port, has 370 watts of power available for PoE. Typical competitors are in the 170 range on the same switch. That means that they don't have to have heating sinks, heat sinks. They don't have to do a lot of the other things. The power supply doesn't have to be as robust. Thus, there's a significant jump in price. Now, we do our best to mitigate that, obviously, just as the higher end ones do, but you'll see a 24 port one from, I think it was Brocade the other day, that had 740 watts. Right? So when somebody goes, why is it that much more than you? Well, they've got a better power supply in there. That's really how that breaks down. But again, we're happy to publish it. I've searched for hours to find it from other manufacturers and not actually found it. I've had to call, or I've had to get somebody else to send me more than just the data sheet. I have to actually get the manual. We offer a number of different solutions out there. We offer managed solutions. We offer indoor and outdoor solutions. And we have comprehensive support. I'm going to get into comprehensive support a little bit later, but that includes pre-sales, that includes post-sales, and that includes design aid. It also, and it doesn't mention it on here, is the firmware and any upgrade that happens to happen. All of that is free. EtherWAN's cost of ownership is exactly what you pay for that product. Not, oh, well, I really needed the routing package on that switch. Well, now here's another $1,000. No. You get the entire product, the entire firmware, and access to any update Say we fix a bug, then maybe you're not even using it to get that bug, but you'll get the firmware update just the same. From our solution standpoint, we have managed solutions and unmanaged solutions for a specific reason. Managed solutions offer you an opportunity to do many different things, but primarily it's control of the network. From an IT perspective, IT people are used to having server racks and large, raised floor temperature control, that kind of stuff, but also having biometric controls or something else that allows them into that facility. So you don't have the ability, if you're not authorized, to plug right in. Whereas our products are out on a pole somewhere in a desert, right? That means that anybody who has a screwdriver can prop open that little cabinet, plug right into your network. So a managed solution will allow you to limit that significantly. And we'll get into that more in a few slides. The indoor and outdoor solutions, we do offer the office grade products. For us, office grade is 0 to 45 degrees centigrade, doesn't have a lot of vibration testing, doesn't have any of that kind of stuff to it, but we also offer the hardened stuff. And I typically explain the difference between them being temperature. Right, you can see minus 40 to 75. Some people ask what plus 75 is. I think it's 168 degrees Fahrenheit, but don't quote me on that. It's somewhere in that range. One of the things that we do is we do a 100% burn-in test on every hardened product. We burn it in for 8 hours at 85 degrees centigrade. That doesn't mean that we want somebody to deploy it at a lifetime at 85 degrees centigrade, but we want to find any component failures, any soldering links that aren't particularly good before it goes to our customer base, so that we know we're shipping a product that's not failing out of the box. So that means that our components, everything inside of that device, is rated to 85. But as soon as we write 85, somebody deploys it at 90, right? That's just not, so again, we, as engineers, we hedge our bets a little bit. On the minus 40 side, that is a cold start. Somebody said, well, it gets to minus 50 up here in Canada. No, it absolutely does. But the switch itself generates its own heat. So as long as it doesn't have, so as long as you don't lose power to it for a significant amount of time, it can be colder. Minus 40 is how fast does the thing start back up. Now, into the actual presentation. Now I've done my sales pitch. We'll get into what the PoE standards are. So this, again, is very brief, intentionally brief. The 802.3 AF standard, which just came around when I was first in the networking world, was 15.4 watts at 48 volts DC. Since then, the Apple Tango abbreviation has been published and implemented, which allows for 30 watts at 48 volt VDC. There we go. It is completely backwards compatible to 802.3 AF. Essentially, all we're doing is changing the amount of current, right? So if you remember V equals IR, which nobody who's not an electrical engineer does, voltage equals current times resistance. So 48 volts at 15.4 watts, or in this case, that'd be P equals IR. That would be how you get those individual numbers. The 802.3 BT, or Boy Tom standard, or Bravo Tom standard, has two different types. And this is important, and we'll talk about that in a little bit further, but it's basically type 3, which allows up to 60 watts of power. And then there's a type 4, which allows up to 90 watts of power. And again, it's totally backwards compatible to AF and AT. So here's some PoE examples. This particular slide shows the power source equipment, things that actually can supply power, and then you'll see power devices, or PDs. So that's PSEs and PDs. This is very hard to communicate with someone when we're on the phone trying to talk about it, because what'd you just call me? A PD? That kind of comes up quite a bit, but you see our switches. You have switches, media converters, and injectors. Those are the primary power source equipment. Now, you can see this come from a computer potentially, right? So if they actually have a switch chip inside of a PC, like an embedded PC, they can still supply power, but it's very rare, mainly because they don't want the extra temperature from that power supply being inside of their device. The power devices, you can see a bunch of them out there. This particular group is expanding every day. PoE lighting, IP cameras, IP phones, wireless access points, and access control systems are all going to be or are moving to PoE capable. The three that I talk about the most are, well, let's just do the two. The two I talk about most are IP cameras and wireless access points. These are the ones that most people are used to. It's kind of traditional PoE. PoE lighting is just starting. IP phones are kind of going away in the dodo, although not inside office environments, not with things like Talk-a-Phone and some of the other emergency phone systems that are out there. And access control is growing consistently, but it's still, for me personally, I don't talk about it much because cameras and access points are usually tied to it, so it doesn't really get it's probably doesn't get the attention it deserves. So as I was saying, these are a number of different options that we offer. Here, what I'm trying to point out is that we're very transparent about the power that we can offer. So everything here is going to be at least alpha tango capable, so that's 802.3 AT capable. So that means up to 30 watts per port. But you'll notice that there's certain ones. For example, on the office grade unmanaged at the very top left, the 8-port, there's a version that has 120 watts and there's a version that has 240 watts. The 240 watt one is the full rack size. So it's the full 19-inch rack that it would go into. The 8-port is more of it designed for a desktop type situation. It's obviously comes with rack mount ears, it just doesn't take up the entire rack space. Almost all of that space is for that power supply, is to give the extra 120 watts and still be able to keep it at a reasonable temperature internally. You can see that there's nothing else on the left of those 8 ports. Hopefully it's clear enough on the screen. You can see that like I said earlier, that we publish what the wattage is capable of, because we're trying to be transparent. We're trying to give you the knowledge that we're going to be full PoE where applicable. Now, what does that mean? What does a switch do if you actually charge? So for example, that first switch is 120 watts, right? At 8 ports, that's only 15.4 watts per port. What if I do 5? So if I was at full 30 watts, I could only get 4 total ports at PoE. What happens if I add a 5th? That is actually up to the switch, and I'm not real sure. I know it will slow down power. I don't think it's not like it shuts off. It may just not allow for it, or you may overdrive the power supply, which could cause shortened life, just so you're aware. Let's see here. At the bottom, you'll notice that we have office grade hardened and office grade and hardened managed versions. These are just a brief overview. This is not our entire switch line, and they grow every week. And we also offer hardened unmanaged. This is a line that isn't as big as I would have expected coming on board. The reason that it isn't is because what I mentioned before. People when they deploy it, they really want to be able to use it, like from a remote location. They want to be able to monitor it. They want to be able to control each individual port because it's not in a secure location. That said, there are a couple out there that we have that are very popular. A 2-in-2 version where basically fiber in, fiber out, and it powers 2 cameras or a camera and an access point type thing. And then a 4-in-2 version, very similar. Again, publishing the amount of PoE that's available to you instantly. So I mentioned this a little bit during a previous slide, but why a managed switch? And I'm going to get to managed versus unmanaged a little bit, but we have an entire presentation scheduled on this format for that, so I'm not going to go too crazy on it. Why should you pay more for a managed switch? This comes up all the time. I'm used to this one. I actually don't want to interact with the switch at all. I've had a number of contractors call me and say, we ordered the wrong one. We've got to manage one. What do we need to do? Nothing at all. You don't want to manage it. Don't do anything to it, right? Sure, you paid a little bit more. Let's call it 20%. But if you don't actually go in and program it, it's going to work just like an unmanaged switch, right? So you just get the capability to do more, not necessarily that you have to do more. Some of the things that it offers you: control, redundancy, limit who has access to the network. So for example, maybe I have a 6-port switch and I've got 3 cameras, a phone, and an access point. So I've got 5 of those 6 ports. You can actually go in and disable port 6, so nobody can plug in, or you can lock each port to the individual device that's plugged into it, so that if somebody unplugs one of your cameras, they can't just plug in and see your cameras and your network, right? There are a lot of control things associated with management. It's not perfect, right? And still, if I know the codes and all that kind of fun stuff, I can still get in, but it's a basic amount of physical access control. You can assess power problems before catastrophe. Basically, some of our products send something called last gasp. That is the catastrophe, right? The power supply fails. It'll send out a "I'm dying because the power supply failed" message. You can also get notifications when and where anything else is going wrong. The idea here is we're trying to limit and lower the mean time to repair, MTTR. A few years ago, this was a huge issue with service providers who had when they were setting up 4G, their networks, they needed to know where all their cell towers were. They needed to know what they were capable of, and they needed to know who was processing data, and they needed to know it very quickly. And they wanted to know before there was a failure or as things were starting to get bad, so that they knew how to fix it fast. Because if you get into service provider contracts, the business service provider contracts, they operate under 4 nines and 5 nines of service, which is the amount of time per year a service can be up or down. Ethernet's not designed for that. Traditional phone lines were. Ethernet is a best case service, typically. Now here, this is going to give you more of the 4 or 5 nines, trying to keep up downtime. Some of the things that EtherWAN offers, we offer something called PoE Watchdog. So if anybody here has ever worked with an access point system or a camera system, be it access camera, be it Olestra, be it whoever's cameras they are, everybody seems to know that the PoE lockup happens all the time. There's really no reason for it. Nobody can say. I was asked once to show, hey, could you show me how PoE Watchdog works? And I'm like, sorry, I can't make that camera lock up. Like, I can show you how to set it, but until the camera itself locks up, you can't actually see it in action. But PoE Watchdog sets per port, you can ping the device that's connected. So you got a camera, it's at 192.168.1.2 IP address. You plug that into the port, it sends a keep alive ping back and forth to the camera on its own forever. If it fails to receive 3 responses in a row, it will automatically power cycle that port. So you don't have to go in, you don't even have to interact. You might not know the camera went down and it's already been recycled and powered. It will also send a SNMP trap, if it's enabled, to a SNMP server, where you might get a text message that says, I recycled power to port number blah, 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 3 times today. Now you know that I'm actually probably have a problem with that camera. I'm gonna have to roll a truck to replace that camera. But you know what port it was, you know which product it was, you can download the config already because you know what you're doing, and boom, it's out, and it's, again, reducing that mean time to repair and reducing the pain. And you can schedule PoE capabilities. Sorry, it's my little viewer is covering that, so I got to read it off the tiny one. But again, the idea being make your life easier. So a managed switch allows that. Now, don't set it up. Don't do any of that stuff. Just put the switch in and you have an unmanaged switch. You just paid more for a feature you're not using. That's all. All right. So EtherWAN offers several powered device options. The primary one that we work with is wireless bridges. There is some serious confusion about what a bridge is and what an access point is. These are both access points and bridges in most cases. But when I personally hear the word wireless access point, I think of the $75 Netgear product that I have at my home. These are not that. These are high-powered, long-distance application things. Can they do that? Some of them can. But if you just need a $70 access point, you probably don't want to come to us. Our products are designed for a specific application for long haul, and then to do that if you need it. So that said, there are a couple different kinds. There's the EW, so EW stands for E-Wave. The E-Wave 75,000-13 is a unidirectional. What that means is it's point to point. It cannot communicate with anything else. You pair it with the SSID on the far end, and then those two are a connection. The EW 75,008 creates more of a globe where it can accept multiple different links coming in, maybe from 3 different EW 75,013s, for example, in an east-west, north-south direction. It is capable of receiving many. It's a very popular thing. I see it in a lot of cases where maybe there's a guard shack and then there's 2 cameras from that guard shack. So this will be at the guard shack, and then there will be a 13 at either end at each camera, for example. EZ-Link, this is our simplest form, lowest cost, lowest range. Now range, this is still 1.2 miles, right? So we're still really cranking it up. So as I said, if you're looking for something that covers 75 square feet, you're probably not coming to us. Even though it can do that, it might not be the perfect application for it. But here, this is the product comes entirely kitted. That means you get the injectors, the PoE injectors, you get both of the access points, or bridges, excuse me, and you get mounts for, screwing it to a pole or what. I'm sorry, I'm not that familiar with the mounts. You get all of that in one part number. The product comes pre-programmed. So literally you point it at the other one. If the green lights come on, you're done, right? Whereas the E-Wave series, you're gonna have to configure it a little bit more. You're gonna have to pair it with the SSID of the far end. We've kind of taken all that out and made these this way, right? It's designed so that it's so easy a caveman can do it. I wrote that, and then I got a little feedback. I'm surprised that's not in quotations because I said, well, it's technically copyright, but as we're not publishing this and we're not creating anything financially from it, I don't think that should be a problem. At the top, before I forget, we have a PoE splitter. A PoE splitter is the reverse of a PoE injector. Basically what it says, or what it does, is it takes power in. So a PoE switch generates the wattage, goes to the PoE splitter. The splitter breaks that out into a cable that doesn't, into an Ethernet cable that does not have PoE, and what I consider a barrel connector, right? So if something wasn't PoE capable, but you still needed to run power there without actually, doing high voltage cabling, this is a great product. It has user selectable inputs for like 10 volts, 12 volts, 24 volts, and 48 volts. So it should accommodate a lot of different end devices. If you have something that it doesn't accommodate, please let us know. It's probably just a setting in which we had outputs. And these aren't managed, so we'd have to probably create a different dip switch or something, but trying the best we can. And that is the entire presentation. I know it was a whirlwind. I know that it wasn't super long. Like I said, we're just giving this a shot. So blame me, don't blame EtherWAN. Does anybody have any questions at this time? And Carly, I'm going to give it back to you. Is that okay?
Yeah, so let's just go through some of the questions you guys have been asking.
Okay.
So one of the first ones that came in was, can you talk about how the load is at the PD? The switch is, for example, 240 watts, but the 30 watt load is at the AP. Therefore, the switch isn't getting extra hot because it's PoE.
Okay, so the way I'm going to point you for additional information to our EtherWAN Academy site. But so the way the load works, so the switch itself is I've always thought of it as a master-slave relationship. The switch is not the master. The device plugged into it is the master. The switch does not. So the way that PoE turns on, there's a 250 kilo ohm resistor across some of the wires, some of the pairs. I don't remember the pinouts. I'm sorry. That's not something I've ever cared about. It just does it. That identifies. So before it starts sending power, it sends a trickle. If it detects that that's there, then it will start a communication process where it says, how much power would you like? How much power do you need? What class of PoE device are you? And then that device slowly comes on, which is a lot of the handshaking going on. That's why sometimes they take a while. So if you have a switch and you recycle power to a far device, it doesn't come right back up, right? It takes it a little bit because it goes through this process every time. So let's say that the camera says, I need 14.2 watts. The switch itself is going to generate enough to get it 14.2 watts. So there's a loss associated with that individual cable. And I'm sorry, I don't know the numbers off the top of my head between the foot, loss per foot. So if you go 200 feet, what the actual loss is, that kind of stuff. But that is there. So the switch itself is not always going to be generating 240 watts of power. It's only going to generate the power that's requested. So when I do get that question about, are you going to burn out my piece of equipment if I plug in a non-PoE product to your switch? And the answer is no. The switch is going to not detect that resistor, and then it is going to not send power. If you're particularly worried about it, you can shut off PoE entirely on each port through the management interface.
Okay, awesome. So next question is, what wireless technology is the EW series?
I assume you're looking for the like AE and so on. I know that the E-Wave series, that one we might have to take offline. Please, whoever that was, send me an email. We've got a ton of information on it, and that will be one of the presentations that are in this schedule. I know that it uses 866, and it uses both bands, and I can't remember. It's 866 megahertz and five. I'm just gonna stop because I'm gonna say it wrong. So.
Next question is, how far can PoE go on an Ethernet cable?
Okay, so PoE can go 110 meters. That's it. Everybody rounds it down to 100 meters. EtherWAN has an extended PoE mode where you can send 10 megabits Ethernet up to 250 meters. I'm sorry if I stumbled on that. It's 250 meters or 804 feet. You are limited to 10 meg. So when somebody asks, well, why would I limit it to 10 meg? Well, a single camera that's out on a pole that distance isn't going to generate more than 10 meg of data, right? But if you're going to another switch, or if you're going to a cluster of cameras, I'd suggest figuring out some way to, maximize, to get within that range, just because more cameras will generate 4 meg each basically, or whatever, and you'll eventually overload that 10 meg. But for that 1 or that 2 camera distance, the PoE can go up to 250.
Okay, and last question we're going to take is PoE Watchdog in web managed switches?
PoE Watchdog should be available on every switch, but please check the data sheet. Some of the older ones may not accept it. I don't have a good breakdown of that off the top of my head. Since I came on board about a year ago, every switch has had PoE Watchdog.
Okay. We're going to wrap things up unless, Zach, you had anything else to say.
Yeah, you know what? Would you pass, if I don't have the display, would you, do I still have display?
Yes, you do.
So I have an example. This is one that I thought of, or that came up previously. What types of design services does EtherWAN offer? I just want to hang on here. Let's see if we can't get this up. This is things that we do for free, that we're happy to do for you. Let's see what we got here. Where'd it go? Where is it? Oh, here we go. No, it's Visio. Sorry, this is going to take me a second to pull up. I'll open which one here? Design aid examples. Okay, so this is just an example of something that came up recently. Now, I'm bringing this up, and I hope that everybody thinks better of us than I do. But basically, this is a design aid example. So with this lovely COVID-19 stuff going around, there are emergency hospitals that have been popping up. So how do you wire an emergency hospital? Here's an example of how we would do it and what kind of equipment we would put in. Now, this is crude. This is me before marketing touches it. So comm closets would actually look like communications closets. A hospital would look like a main hospital, not just a big blue block, obviously. Beds and tents, however they want to do it. But then you see a part number in there, wireless links, single mode fiber runs, single mode fiber rings, things like that. This is just one particular variant where we use the E-Wave series from communication back to the primary office. Here's one where everything's wireless in the event that they aren't able to run cable between each individual tent. And then here's one where we actually use our 4G modems. In the case of, like, I saw in the news recently, they're putting up a mobile hospital at Central Park, I believe, in New York City, or in one of the other parks. Well, the hospital's not anywhere near there. So here, this makes sense to go to a service provider like a Verizon tower, which is what's centered there, or an AT&T, right? And now we backhaul it back to the main hospital. Just so you know, and that's it. That sums it up for me. Obviously, these are, like I said, crude, just me cranking stuff out as fast as I can. But know that we're here to help. That's it, Carly. That's all for me, Carly.
Okay, awesome. Thanks everyone for joining us. And that'll wrap things up for today. Let's see.